everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are doing the Get to Know My Taste tag. This was originally created by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes and Mari from My Name is Marinez, and I will tag both of them in the description if you want to check them out. But the intention of this is to give a concise description of your reading taste, your rating and reviewing style, and what to expect from your channel, so it is easy to find new booktubers that you may have things in common with. I am going to be a little bit annoying and do the questions out of order because I just had to put them in an order that made sense for my brain, but I will put the questions in the original order in the description if you want to see them. But let's just get started. Question 1, do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate toward, or do you read widely across genres? I am definitely a genre niche person. I mostly read fantasy, and mostly fantasy written by women. That's not really something I do intentionally, it's just sort of organically happened over the years that most of the authors that I read are women. Even more specifically, I really love fantasy written by women from the like 90s and early 2000s. Some other niches that I love, like Celtic historical fantasy. Many of my favorite books kind of fall into that very specific niche subgenre. There are certainly tropes that I tend to read a lot of. I love books that have healers. I love books that have a foresty nature setting, like nature vibes are just one of my favorite things. So there are certainly some like very specific niches that I tend to read. I'll dabble in a couple of other genres here and there, read a little bit of sci-fi, a little historical fiction, maybe some magical realism. Every year I read, you know, a couple of contemporary romances here and there. Once in a while I will read a YA contemporary. I'll throw in a nonfiction or poetry every once in a while, but not that often. So most of what I read is mostly adult high fantasy, although I will read some YA fantasy as well, and then just dabble a tiny bit in some other genres here and there. What's the book that made you a reader? Whether it was your first favorite or the one that got you hooked, what book started it all? I have always loved books. Like, I've loved books since I was a kid. My mom loves books and like has so many books. Growing up, it was like there are books in every room of the house. There was one room that we called the library because it was like wall-to-wall bookcases. So I think I inherited some of my mom's obsession with books and certainly grew up like loving books and just always consuming stories. I did refuse to learn how to read until I was about 9 years old, but even so, I loved books and stories. I just didn't want to read them with my own eyes. I loved it when my mom read out loud to me, and she read out loud a lot. And I also listened to audiobooks. We listened to all of the Redwall audiobooks as a kid, and I was obsessed. Like, I have always loved books, even when I was refusing to learn how to read. But I learned how to read around 9, and then I got into reading on my own around 11. And what got me into it was Tamara Pierce's Tortall books. So those are the ones that I really credit with getting me into reading, because although of course listening to audiobooks is reading, her Tortall books are the ones that really got me into reading independently and reading on my own and reading a lot more. And as a kid, I was very adamantly against anything that involved the real world. Like, I would read the description of a book, you know, at the library, at a bookstore, and the moment it described any kind of modern setting, event, technology, weapons, anything that seemed remotely modern, I was like immediately out. Do not want to read this. So I was not interested in books that were like contemporary fantasy, portal fantasy, and that's why things like Narnia or Harry Potter never really got me hooked as a kid. But Tamara Pierce's books were perfect because they had everything that I loved. They were a high fantasy, second world fantasy, like in their own fantasy world, interconnected series. They had strong female characters and a variety of different kinds of female characters. There was magic, there was healing magic, which is one of my favorite tropes. There was magic that they could talk to animals, heal animals, transform into animals. I was very obsessed with animals as a kid, so that was like right up my alley. Yeah, there was like cool magic, there was romance. It just like, that series just had everything, or that world of series just had everything I could want as a kid. And so her books are really what got me excited and got me hooked on reading on my own. Do you generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? I am definitely a character-driven reader. I am really in it for like characters and relationships and writing an atmosphere. And plot, I can take or leave. Like if I am fully invested in the characters and I am enjoying the writing and the vibes, the plot doesn't really matter to me. Of course, love a good plot, but it's really a bonus. So I am fully in it for the characters. For me, I think the things that are most important for characters are, one, I think that they need to at least be either likable or interesting. Characters don't have to be likable for me as long as they're interesting. If the character work is interesting or well done, I will follow a character that I don't like just because they're fascinating. I'm not necessarily looking for characters that I find relatable. I very rarely find characters relatable, but I want characters that I enjoy following either because they are likable or interesting, or both would be ideal. And the other thing that I'm particularly interested in with characters is character development, how characters change over time, for better or for worse. But I love characters that grow, which is part of why I think I'm not that interested in more like slice of life type stories, because those tend to be just kind of a snapshot of a moment in time, and so the character work is more stationary. It's not really about character growth or change, it's more about depicting the character in that moment, which is fine, but that's less interesting to me. I am most interested in seeing how characters grow, and very often my favorite characters end up being the ones who've changed the most over the course of the book or the series. What do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose style, themes, voice, structure, or something else? Writing is very important to me, and I think has only become more important to me over time. I have only become more picky about writing. I think I often struggle to articulate what I like or don't like in writing, but I definitely know it when I see it, whether it's I know I do like it or I don't like it. I know that I tend to go for more like atmospheric, lyrical, emotional writing. Some people tend to call the books that I like flowery, but to me there is a very clear difference between beautiful writing that is truly evocative and intentionally beautiful in the way that it is written, versus writing that is just sort of flowery for the sake of being flowery, that it isn't done with the same intentionality, and that often ends up feeling kind of hollow or forced to me. And I don't know if I could explain exactly what the difference is, but I definitely know it when I see it. So I love beautiful flowery writing, but I am still particular even within that description, because I think there is a difference between that like intentionally beautiful and emotionally evocative writing and writing that is really just purple prose. It's just words for words. And I think that intentionality and the skill of that is really important, because there are certain books that I have read that do not have very flowery, descriptive, or atmospheric writing, that the writing is very sparse and almost like brutal in the way that it is written. but if it is done with a lot of skill and a lot of intentionality, I can still like that. So there are some exceptions, but in general, I am going for lyrical, atmospheric, evocative, emotional writing. What's a book you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? What's that one book you love enough for everyone? I feel like I could have a lot of answers for this one, but I'm gonna go with The Queens of Innisleer by Tessa Gratton. This is one of my all-time favorite books. It is a feminist retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear, told from the perspective of the three daughters, and it has so many of the things that I love. The writing is so beautiful and atmospheric. It is almost poetic in the way that it is written. It is very character driven, character focused. It really is a slow political family drama. And the characters, though, I think are just drawn so beautifully. They are almost archetypal in the way that they are written, and it is just fantastic. The setting also beautiful. It is set on this like lush sentient island where they can literally like speak to the trees. It is just so beautiful. It is also tragic because it is based on a Shakespearean tragedy, but it is so emotional and I love the characters so much. However, it is a book that I rarely recommend because I know that it's not going to be for everyone. When people don't like The Queens of Innisleer, I'm like, fair. Like, fair enough. I get it. I get why it may not work for everybody. Between the writing style, it's very character focused, it's very slow, it can be kind of dense, like it's not necessarily a quick read. I know is not going to be for everyone. It's not a hit for everyone, and that's okay, but I love it a lot, and truly I will just scream about it on the internet forever, which I'm realizing I actually don't talk about it that frequently because I don't recommend it that often, and I really should talk about it more because I love it. So maybe you might be hearing more about it. I might be screaming on the internet more about this book because I'm realizing I don't just like profess my love for it often enough. What's a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know your reading tastes don't align? The book or books where a difference of opinion is a strong indicator of different reading preferences. I don't know if there is a single book that I would generally make that decision based on. A lot of times I think it's kind of cumulative of how many books and which books do we agree or disagree on, and also why did they not like those books, because the why is important to me. But for the sake of the question, I will say Juliet Marillier, which will be no surprise if you've watched any of my videos. I have a whole playlist on my channel of many videos that I have made about this author and her books because she is truly one of my all-time favorite authors, and I have been reading and rereading her books for years. And although she does have a lot of consistency in the types of stories that she tells, she also has quite a few different series, and I think that if you can't find anything within her catalog of books that you like, we probably have very different taste. Some of the things that I love about her books, I will try to keep this brief because I can just like go on and on about her, but she writes historical fantasy, and her books are often following women who are wise women, healers, or just regular women who have to really rise to the occasion of difficult circumstances. One of the things I love so much is that she has such strong female characters, and they're not necessarily strong in the way that I think many other books interpret that they are not. Often they are not warriors, often they are not like obnoxiously stubborn for no reason. They are strong because they have an internal strength of character, because of their love and dedication to their families, because they are clever and resourceful, because they are intuitive, because they have like a real deep faith in other human beings. There are so many ways in which they are strong and have this internal strength. Her stories also weave in folklore and storytelling so beautifully. Her writing is beautiful and atmospheric. She does fantastic nature vibes, which I love. And I think that her stories, although her characters do go through some terrible things, her books have a lot of hope infused in them, which I also just love. So that is something that there are a lot of consistencies across her work, but I think that if someone cannot find anything from her catalog that they enjoy, then we're probably fundamentally looking for or enjoying different things in books. What's in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes that you know are bad, but you love them anyway? I genuinely cannot think of anything right now, and probably like after I post this video, I will remember something and I will be so annoyed that I couldn't think of anything in the moment. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that, if present, immediately turns you off from a book? I think there are a lot of things that turn me off from books. As much as I love books, I am also extremely picky and particular about what I want to read. I will try to keep this brief, but we'll put things in categories. So one is, there are certain genres that I just don't really like, so if I realize they are in this genre, I don't want to read it. I don't really read like mystery, thriller, or horror books, so if things fall into those genres, I generally will put it down unless there is some other factor that is really motivating me to pick it up. I also don't really read romantasy, even though I do primarily read fantasy written by women and I love a romantic subplot. The books that truly fall into romantasy as a distinct genre just are not for me. Also, urban fantasy isn't really for me, and grimdark fantasy. For tropes, a lot of the tropes or creatures that go along with urban fantasy, so I really am not interested in vampires or werewolves or like zombies. I also am not particularly interested in like hard magic system. I prefer a soft magic system for sure. I want things to still have like a internal logic and consistency, but those really detailed hard magic systems just don't really land for me. Some other things that will turn me off from a book, like once I'm reading it, definitely poor character work, characterization, or really like bad or inconsistent character work, or like really shallow character relationships. Those will certainly turn me off from a book. And bad writing. Bad writing in general, but a particular pet peeve is thesaurus writing, which is when like somebody doesn't know how to use a word in context and it feels like the author probably had a simpler word, but they wanted something that sounded fancier, so they just went to a thesaurus, found a synonym, and plugged that in without actually knowing what that synonym meant or how to use it in context. So those things where they're like slightly misusing a word and I'm like, I see what you're trying to do, but that's not really what that word means, really drives me crazy. And thesaurus writing, I think, is just becoming more and more common, and I hate it. So, as you may be able to tell, I am pretty particular, and there are a lot of things that will turn me off from a book, but I don't know, at least I know my taste, I guess. How do you rate books? Give a quick rundown of how you do your star ratings, or if you don't use star ratings, how do you evaluate books? I'm not particularly fancy. I use a 5-star rating scale. In general, well, I think before I explain this, I have to say I DNF very frequently. I have no qualms about DNFing a book that I am not enjoying. So very often, if I feel like a book is going to be below 3 stars, I won't bother to finish it. There are some rare occasions where I might, you know, if there is a specific reason that I am motivated to finish it, or if I have some obligation to read it, or in the very rare occasion I will hate read a book, but that is not something I make a habit of doing. So it's very rare that you would see a 1 or 2 star rating from me at all, but what they generally mean, I think it's pretty standard. Like a 1 star rating is generally like, I hated this book. Goodreads won't let me give it 0 stars, so this is the very lowest rating I can possibly give it, and I'm gonna do that because I hated it. Usually 1 star books are books also that made me go, this might be the worst book I've ever read in my life. A 2 star rating is maybe not quite so bad. I usually will not feel like a 2 star book is like the worst book I've ever read, but it's certainly not good and I really disliked it. It maybe had some redeeming quality or something that made me go like, I hated this, but I could see how someone ever could possibly like something about this. So that is a 2 star. 3 star is pretty neutral. I think a 3 star can either be very neutral, I don't have strong feelings about it, it's very like in the middle, just okay, or it had some high highs and low lows and I just had to kind of split the difference and give it 3 stars. 4 stars starts into the like, I loved this, I had a great time, I really liked this book, and then of course 5 stars was like, this was incredible. However, I will say for me personally, there are 4 star books there are books that I've rated 4 stars that are all-time favorites and that I personally love more than some books that I have rated 5 stars, because there may be something about them that I'm like, this was not perfect. It had some clear flaws. And so I could not necessarily give it 5 stars, but in my feelings, I loved it and it is still a favorite. So 5 star doesn't necessarily mean it's a favorite, and 4 star could actually be a favorite. So that's confusing and I get that, but that is how it works sometimes. I do use half star ratings. I do not go down to quarter stars just because for my own self, my own tracking, that's just like a little too fussy for me. So I do half stars, but not like quarter stars. Something else that impacts how I think about my like rating for books is also, would I recommend this book to somebody? In general, like 1 and 2 star books are usually ones where like if someone asks me, should I read this book? I will say no. It is a bad book. Do not read it. I will go out of my way to be like, this book is bad, don't read it. A 3 star book, I would not try to stop somebody from reading it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I certainly would not include a 3 star book in a general recommendation video, because in a general recommendation, that's kind of more of a blanket, like, I thought this was good, you might like it too. And so those kind of recommendations usually start at like 3.5 and above. A 3 star book I might recommend to somebody if I'm like talking to an individual person and I know even if I didn't love this book, it would fit their taste very well. So I would give it as like an individual recommendation, but not like a broad recommendation. And then 3.5 and above, I would start giving as more broad recommendations. How do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? I think my review style has definitely changed over time and I go through different phases. I have gone through phases where I was much more structured and had certain categories that I would make sure I hit in like every review. I've gone through periods where I reviewed much more like emotionally. I think at this point, I think I try to do a combination of analytical and emotional. I certainly do incorporate just kind of how did I feel about this book. My review style I would maybe describe as like introspective. I don't know, because I think that it really is about like analyzing how does this or does this not work for me. And partially that's because I am always trying to better understand my own taste so that I can understand why I reacted to this book in this way, and so that I can figure out, you know, in the future, how do I find books that do or do not align with my taste? I try to make a very clear distinction between my own, like, very subjective personal feelings about it, how it aligns with my taste, versus elements that may be more objective, and my critiques that are more about the, like, quality of the book. I just think it's important to make that clear distinction between personal taste and quality, or those more objective elements of a book, because as we have learned, I am very picky about books. There are a lot of things I don't like, and so I don't want to just hate on a book because it doesn't align with my very specific niche taste. Also, I think my review style is very much like, I'm trying to be clear with you as the viewer so that you know how much your taste aligns with mine. It's actually pretty rare that I directly give recommendations. My style is much more that I try to really, like, parse out why a book did or didn't work for me. And then I am trusting you as the viewer to be able to decide, based on what you know about my taste, how our tastes align or don't align. Do you want to read this book? And that is more so like how I am recommending books to people, less so a direct recommendation and more so about taste alignment. But for that to work, you have to really know what is my taste, and I have to be really clear with you about what worked and what didn't work for me. I also love being able to really, you know, articulate my feelings about a book, because I will also sometimes get comments from people who are saying, like, oh, thank God somebody else had this, like, very specific reaction or feeling about this book, and I love that. Or people will be like, I felt exactly the same way, but I didn't know how to articulate that. Like, I love those kind of comments, and I'm so happy when people can, like, you know, find that kindred spirit or find a way to articulate a feeling or opinion that they had about a book. So yeah, that is how I would describe my review style, is maybe that kind of introspective, a sort of analytical introspective style with a lot of trust for my viewers. What's a strong opinion you have about a book released within the last year, whether it's overrated, underrated, or just a take you need to share? I don't know if this is a strong enough opinion for this, but I did recently read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and I gotta say, I think it's overhyped. Now, this may be because maybe I should have known better, because it is romantasy, and I generally am pretty good about steering clear of romantasy because I know I don't really like it. But this one lured me in with the promise of knights, and that is something I can't resist. And yeah, I found it very overhyped. Also, I don't agree with a lot of the reviews that I have seen. Like, I've seen a lot of people reviewing it saying, like, this book isn't romantasy, it's just fantasy because it's so unlike other romantasy. And I so disagree with that. Like, when I read it, granted, I have to put a caveat that, like, obviously I don't read a lot of romantasy, so maybe I am not an expert on this. However, when I read The Night and the Moth, I was like, yeah, this is certainly romantasy, and it is very similar to other romantasy that I have read. It is maybe one of the better quality ones that I have read from my, you know, small experience with romantasy, but to me, it definitely still has a lot of the romantasy tropes. That's my dog sighing in the background. But it definitely has a lot of the same romantasy tropes, a lot of the same writing elements in it. It definitely does have thesaurus writing, which was very annoying, and I had to switch to audiobook so I would stop being mad about it. How do you decide what to read next? Do you plan ahead, mood read, or follow external factors like hype, recommendations, or arcs? I am very much a mood reader. I really like to just follow where my mood takes me, and that's really how I'm happiest, you know? I tend to burn out on reading more easily if I try to overly control or structure my reading. So mood reading really works best for me, but also in this I will kind of go through some phases. Like this year I have been more structured than in previous years because I've been doing my TBR clear out project, where I'm trying to get the books that have been on my physical TBR the longest off of my TBR by the end of the year. And so that has somewhat dictated my my reading this year, although still within that I try to give myself lots of leeway and wiggle room so that I can still mood read as I kind of incorporate these books into my reading. I also, just the last couple months, have been doing some like small TBRs on my Instagram, so we'll see how long that lasts, because I usually struggle to stick to a TBR. But yeah, so this year I have been a little more structured than in some previous years, but I usually do better with a lot of flexibility, a lot of open-endedness to my plans, and really just mood reading. And honestly, that's kind of what I'm like in my entire life. Where do you get inspiration for your booktube content? What sparks your video ideas? Other creators, trends, personal reading experiences? My content, I think, is pretty basic because I mostly do, wrap-ups, hauls, reviews. So I'm not necessarily like sourcing inspiration from a lot of different places, because it's not like I'm doing anything that revolutionary. But I will sometimes, get inspiration from other creators, if they're doing something like cool or interesting. I definitely will take inspiration from other creators sometimes. I don't follow a lot of trends, and very often by the time I feel ready to do a trend, like it passed me by a long time ago, so I'm often quite late to trends, such as this tag. This tag was made months ago and I've been meaning to do it for months, and I'm finally doing it now. So I'm not very good at following trends. I do get inspiration, I guess, from my own reading experience, or a lot of times, well, I guess I get ideas for recommendations usually just from as I am either analyzing my own reading and seeing a pattern in certain types of books or tropes that I like, and then I want to do a recommendation based on that, or just looking at my books and realizing like, hey, I have a lot of books that fall into this one category. I could do that as a recommendation video. Or I get inspiration from conversations that I have with people in my life. Sometimes it's just things that I've been thinking about a lot, like when I did a while ago, and I really want to do more of these, I did some videos where I was analyzing the Enneagram types of different characters in books. That is something that is purely just because I think about this a lot, and I was like, I think about this, so I want to tell somebody else about it. I don't know if anyone else is interested in this. If you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? A book you think deserves more attention, and why? I kind of struggle with this question because I don't think that virality is really my goal. With books that I really love, I tend to actually be a little bit possessive of them and a little protective, where I'm just like, no, I love this book so much, I don't want too many people to read it, which maybe doesn't make any sense with the fact that I have a booktube channel, which like the point is to tell people about the books that I love so that they can also read and love those books. So this is a real internal conflict for me. But for the sake of the question, I'll just go with Morgan Is My Name by Sophie Keach. I read this last year, one of my favorite things I read last year. It is an Arthurian retelling about Morgan Le Fay. I have only read the first book in the series so far, but I loved it. I think the writing was fantastic. I loved this interpretation of Morgan's character and her backstory. It just was so good, and I'm so excited to read the rest of the series. Who are some booktubers with reading taste similar to yours? Honestly, I don't feel like I have a lot of answers for this. I will mention a couple people in just a second, but part of why I wanted to do this video and why I'm interested in this project of this tag is because I would love to find more people that have similar tastes to me that I can watch. I think a lot of the people that I used to watch who had the most similar reading taste to me don't really post videos anymore, which is really sad, and I miss them. I love watching booktube. I watch a lot of booktube content. At the moment, I mostly do not watch booktube for recommendations because there are not a lot of people that I think I have very similar taste to. So I'm mostly watching booktube more so just for people's personalities, because I enjoy the way that they talk about books, or because I want to know about books that I may not want to read, but I want to know other people's opinions about it. So that's the majority of my booktube watching. But I do have a couple of booktubers I'll mention that I think we have some overlap, at least in the Venn diagram of our reading. One is Kristen's Fully Booked. I know that she loves Juliet Marillier, and we have some other books and authors in common. I also like the brothers Gwyn. They read a lot of historical fantasy and historical fiction, and they have read like Shauna Lawless and Amanda Scott, so we have some overlap there. And then a little bit of a different kind of commonality. I do also watch Leanne's Library, and we have very few books in common, although I do think that she liked The Queens of Innisleer and The Binding, which I love both of those books. But I think that we have a lot of overlap in the books that we dislike and the types of things that we critique in books. So the actual books that we read, maybe not a lot of overlap, but in terms of what we look for in books and what we dislike in books, I think there's a lot of overlap. I will link all of them in the description, but that is the Get to Know My Taste tag. I would love to know if you have a channel and you think we have similar reading taste, let me know. I would love to check it out. Or if there is another channel that you watch that you think I would love and I would have similar tastes to them, please let me know. I am always looking for new channels to follow. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.